we came out of that one, we're like, all right, let's just brush this one off. We talked to the pit crew. It wasn't like we were beating anybody up. It was like, guys, all right, we know we can do better. Just let's shake that one off, bring our best stuff the next week, and everybody refocus. And that's really what we did going into Michigan. So that was nice to say, like, hey, we shook off the bad one. We brought our best stuff to Michigan and showed that we can compete, at that level.
When you say substantially less horsepower, are you talking 4 or 5, talking 20, 25, or you just don't know?
No, it's more in the 20, 25, maybe more than that range.
Wow.
Welcome in. It is Backstretch Banter on Sirius XM NASCAR Channel 90. I am Chris Childers. This is the home of Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. We do not have Mr. Massaro today. Instead, Elijah Burke is hanging out on the program. Elijah with Roush Fenway Keselowski, and we have some great guests planned for the hour. The later half of the hour, we got Josh coming back on the show. Josh Shell, who he's been on this show at least, I think, 3-4 times at this point now. Competition director, super smart guy, in charge of the whole thing when it comes to what's going on Sundays and working with all three teams with the 60 and the 17 and the 6. So we'll get to Josh in a little bit. But first, Scott Graves is the man who's calling the shots for the number 17. He is the crew chief for Chris Buescher. He joins us today. And for those that watched the race last week, pretty good weekend for the number 17 car, finishing number 2. Scott Graves, how are you, sir? I know we want to be 1, but how do we feel about last weekend? Pretty darn good weekend for the 17 team.
It was. You got the kind of the initial, it's kind of initially it's a little bit of a disappointment because you're that close, and we knew we had the car to beat there. Felt like we could have got the win, and you get past that, though, and you look at it, overall weekend, it's like big picture. We scored a lot of points. I think second most points on the day. Really finally, achieved some of the goals we've been talking about. Like, we qualified well. We got the stage points. We got a good race finish. So a lot to go from there, and if we can continue to build on that, we're going to be in good shape.
Well, it was a beautiful weekend, Elijah. It really was. And I'm sure from your perspective as somebody who works with everybody, it was, everybody left happy, right? Everybody's in the top 10. I'm sure Josh is going to be a proud parent a little bit later. But Elijah, as we talked to Scott today, certainly that 17 team from your perspective, I'm sure it was pretty cool to watch it all come together.
Yeah, it was cool for all three teams. I know Chris seemed pretty disappointed that, he didn't get the win we got out of the car, obviously. But it's a huge momentum builder, I feel like, for everyone. I know on our side, we're trying to figure out in the PR department who's going to win the race and how it's going to play out. And, we're going between pit box to pit box. It's, the 60's in position, the 6 was, and the final run, it was the 17's in position, and he's really closing. And, I know the bobble off too. Chris wishes he could kind of have that one back and go through that. But still, I look at the last 3 races, and you got first in 2023, you got the recovery from the wreck to 6th last year, and then, second this year. Obviously, RFK Racing is, I think Michigan's, that's one of our best tracks overall. It's become one of our best tracks, and it's great being Ford's backyard and Jack's backyard. I want to ask Scott, I know you guys tested a couple months ago. You already were fast there, but what did you maybe find or what did you fine-tune on that you said, wow, we have the race car to beat or something that can contend going into the weekend? Because you guys were bad fast out of the gate.
Yeah, for sure. The test really just kind of gave us I'd say a preview to the tire. We had a new left side tire, and that just allows you to unload, have a better indication of that. You unload close. We barely touched the car through practice. Really even going into the race, just tiny adjustments. And that's so much of this is about, you're fast. You're going to be fast or not really when you load the car in the hauler. And it's what you do in the prep to get to the race. And it's, if you're off when you get there, it's a lot, you're behind. It's hard to put all that together. So just having that ability to go run, even, the temperatures it was in the 40s when we tested there, but still we got an indication of what the tire was going to be like. Allows us to put that into our prep and then unload close and fast, and that just carried through the whole weekend.
So it was actually helpful. So the testing, and even though the weather, because we've talked about that on the show. I mean, we talked about the Michigan test. We talked about the fact that it was going to be cold. We're wondering how much information was going to be applicable. So it actually did help, is what you're saying.
It did. I remember talking about it. We had our concerns going into it that it's going to be so cold that, wide open, really not gonna see anything. And that part of it changed. I mean, we really did at the test. Some of the tire combinations, he was up to like 10 or 12 laps wide open, and you didn't see any of that outside of qualifying. You didn't see any of that. Like when we started off practice, he went out there and initially he was trying to hold it wide open. And it's like, it's not going to happen. It was, 40, 50 degrees hotter and, track temps and, quite a bit warmer overall. So, but still we did see through that test, just the different tire combinations they threw at us that they were looking at bringing back and changes they were going to make. We could see a little down, or he could feel different balance changes, and we knew kind of like what adjustments we were going to have to make for those. So it was more helpful from that standpoint than I thought it would be.
I remember listening to Chris's radio in Nashville the week before, and obviously things were just not going right for you guys pretty much the whole day. It felt like, the everything overall didn't pan out exactly how you guys had planned for a track that, we thought would be strong, and kind of it felt like, almost just going back to the drawing board after, like, all right, we got to regroup, get the momentum back going. How does going to a place like Michigan and having a strong run, albeit, not the checkered flag, but a strong run kind of, reset you guys going into, what's one of the more anticipated races, and obviously, a type of track being a road course that Chris is really strong at. Also, like, what are your thoughts on, the Mexico race overall?
Yeah, I guess, initially going back to kind of like the misstep in Nashville, and we had a lot of issues going on. We had pit stops. We had restarts were not going our way. We had decisions I was making. Like it was just kind of a big fumble overall, like through the night. And like we came out of that one, we're like, all right, let's just brush this one off. And we talked to the pit crew. It wasn't like we were beating anybody up. It was like, guys, all right, we know we can do better. Just let's shake that one off, bring our best stuff the next week, and everybody refocus. And that's really what we did going into Michigan. So that was nice to say, like, hey, we shook off the bad one. We brought our best stuff to Michigan and showed that we can compete, at that level. And really, the pit crew I think they were ranked first on the weekend for the race for 4 tire stops. So, great job there. Obviously the qualifying side of it, the whole weekend obviously went well. So that's really where we want to be. I think, an indication of what we're capable of. Obviously our goal is to do that more often, to give ourselves more opportunities to be in that position so that we can get to the win. I think, like looking at where we're at, we're excited about this whole stretch coming up, not just Mexico, but, you go Mexico, you go Pocono, Atlanta, we get into a couple road courses, Chicago street course, Sonoma is like another strong track for us. Really looking forward. I think our whole team's looking forward to this next stretch. Pocono, we had a really good car there last year. So I say, I think we can bring back some good stuff there. Mexico might be a little bit of a unknown. Just, it's going to be new for us. It's new for everybody. Kind of like Chicago street course was a couple of years ago. So it's whoever can get there and pick it up the fastest. Whoever, can hit it right to start, who can hit it the fastest. And then we'll see the race. There's potential of some rain. There's a lot of things that could make this an interesting weekend. But we'll just have to, whoever manages that whole thing the best is going to come out of there.
That's what I was wondering about the variable aspect of this, because it's in another country. And I started thinking about it. If there's ever a sport where this might be kind of funny to take the participants in the sport and put them in Mexico City, it's this one. You have like a bunch of guys from rural America, and you're going to put them in a place where they're not speaking the language and the whole thing. And it's going to be kind of funny to see them as fish out of water, right? And I'm sure there's people in the garage that are like, man, I've never left, whatever. I've never left, the United States. And they're probably scared about the food and the water and whatever the hell they're scared about. So I do wonder, and I wonder if it's happening within your team, if there is some level of the unknown of going to a different country and what that brings, and if that will impact the ability, or at least hopefully not the 17, but other teams out there, their ability to actually focus on the job, Scott.
Yeah, for sure. Like a lot of that comes into play, just the outside distractions that you don't have on a normal weekend. And there's a lot of things that are different. As a sport, like, we're all flying down there basically together, on the same airplanes. Right from the very beginning, it's going to be different.
Yep.
The charter buses to the hotel, to and from the hotel to the track. It's going to be a different experience, and I'm sure like there's a lot of there's been a lot of discussion amongst team members. You got to be careful about the water, just little things like that, the things you don't think about, like we're talking about it, and it's like, potentially, don't drink the water, but that also means then you got to worry about ice. And then people were talking about like salads, if they wash that, just a lot of things that you might not think about. And then all those become little mental distractions that you're thinking about throughout the weekend.
Tell your guys to avoid the salad because you absolutely can get the stomach problem.
Yeah.
And the water, and I think you'll be fine. You'll be good. You'll be good to go.
Yep.
And you'll be able to focus, and everybody will be good. It's a wonderful city. It really is. Mexico City's beautiful, but certainly it has different things you have to think about as a visitor.
Yep.
And it's an interesting world, but it's going to be fun to see NASCAR as a group of racers and such to go down there to Mexico City together. Elijah brought up the fact that Nashville wasn't great, and then last week the entire team finished in the top 10. And I think, I could ask you this question, and if you could give me a legitimate answer, you'd be worth $5 gazillion because you could bottle it up and sell it to everybody. But how does a team go? How do you go from not having any success at all collectively to having great success collectively? Like, how does that bounce back legitimately happen? I know you kind of got into a little bit, but was there anything that Josh said? Like, how does that happen so drastically from week to week?
Yeah, I think, you see this across some different organizations that, we all are, I guess we talk about it like we're one team, right? 3 cars, but one team. And, and you see in a situation like that, we're all very similar, car build, setups, things like that. So you get in those situations if, what we thought was, a really good setup. For instance, in our case, 6, 17 for Nashville, we built off kind of what we had last year. We had some decent runs. Like we looked at the rankings from last year, where we stood, where we ran a lot of the race. And both of our cars were, most of the metrics, we were both top 10 cars. So we're like, okay, that's pretty good. Something we can build off of. And the 60's in a point right now where they're kind of like, they're doing some of their own little things, but for the most part, they're like, all right, we're, where we go, they're trying to build off of that too. And we got the balance targets and things like that. So they're working with us. So that's how you end up, we go back, and this time it was a night race, and the tires were, the left side tire again was different, and it created a different race than what we had last year. The track never really opened up that much. It just kind of was fixed one lane on the bottom. It was a different race than last year, so that what we had last year didn't necessarily work as well as we anticipated. So, but that's how we got there. We're all pretty close, and we show up, and that's, like I say, unfortunately it didn't work out for us. But we take the same approach going into Michigan. Both cars ran really well there last year. We did the test. Things look good. We had a lot of good notes to build off of. All 3 cars show up pretty similar, and like I say, we're all able to get a pretty good result out of it.
Incredible how it works, right? It is, and maybe just the test was the difference. Who knows? But it's incredible how that works. Scott Graves, our guest today. Elijah Burke hanging out as my co-host and a guy who does an incredible job from the social media side there at RFK. If you're a follower of the RFK Twitter, and you're like, man, that group is so witty, Elijah Burke is my guy right there. You can thank him. Let's take a break. We'll come, and I'll tell you what, it is actually one of the best Twitters out there for a sports team. So job well done to you guys. But let's take a break. We will come back, talk more about Viva la Mexico. It's Mexico City week here. It is a road race coming up in the country south of the border. And we'll talk more with Scott Graves, the crew chief of the number 17 car, next right here on Backstreet Banter with RFK Racing. We're back here. It is Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing. Chris Childers, Elijah Burke hanging out. He is the social media, I would say, wizard of RFK. All that magic you see coming from RFK on the weekends and throughout the week with their team, the 6th, 16, and the 60, or the 6th, 17, and the 60. It is, what did I say, 16? Well, my brain is mush.
I don't know how much money I paid you, Chris, but I appreciate it.
I'll tell you what, I took that cruise last week. I know and you kept me up to date on everything with social media, but I got to get these numbers all straightened up because my mind
Good. I
is
get to keep my job for a little longer.
Exactly. But Scott Graves is our guest today. He is the crew chief of the number 17 for the Ford Mustang. And they finished number 2 last week. It would be incredible to go one more spot and be number 1 in a brand new country, brand new track in Mexico City. And we all got our fingers crossed that that's going to happen this week for all 3 cars to finish 1, 2, and 3 would be pretty damn cool. It's Mexico, and this is uncharted territory. We know Buescher, though, has a shot. We've seen him win on road races before, and he's a guy that, what's cool about Chris Buescher, Scott, and you can explain how he's evolved as the guy that's worked hand in hand with him, he's evolved into a guy that can win anywhere. He's got wins now on short tracks. He's got them on super speedways. He's got them on road race tracks. He's got them everywhere. How did Chris, and this might be just a testament to who he is as a racer and as an athlete, but how did he get good in this department? I think a lot of people would say Chris has a chance to win this weekend. From your perspective as his crew chief, why would that be?
Yeah, he, I don't, and you ask, like, people ask him, like, you know, what's your background? Were you a road course guy? And he's like, no, no, it wasn't something that he did, but he's always been good at it. And I guess I just attribute a lot of it just to his driving style. I mean, he's very smooth, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. I mean, so much of road courses is just like keeping it on the track and, you know, not making those mistakes. And he just does a great job with that, and he figures out how to make speed while doing it. So that's, I mean, that's strong suit. I mean, the first race, I mean, going way back, it's over 10 years ago now when I first worked with Chris in Xfinity. The first race he won in the Xfinity Series was, I mean, it was at Mid-Ohio road course. So it was, and yeah, I mean, that's, he's always had that strength, that ability, but, you know, he said it's not something that he grew up doing. But it's just something that he's got. So, but yeah, I mean, well-rounded driver. Like you mentioned, all the different styles of tracks that we've had wins at, and he's shown that if we can give him a good car and get him out front, then he's capable of making it happen.
I feel like a lot of us were first privy to it at Sonoma in 2022 when I know you guys had the test there, I think earlier in the year, or RFK was testing there at some point, and then came back and Chris was just in contention, top 3 all day long, and you're like, all right, man, like this is like Chris. Yeah. I knew Chris won at Mid-Ohio, but you just didn't pick him as a road course guy, that was the moment where I'm like, okay, and then he came back at more road courses, and kept doing well. Actually, the test was at Watkins Glen, wasn't it?
We did a Watkins Glen test.
That's what it was. Okay. Yeah. I was remembering wrong. But either way, he's just that guy. I was reading a tweet earlier today where everyone's like, why does no one pick Chris as like the favorite at a road course? And I'm like, well, like he's not dominating the road course, but he always puts himself in position to capitalize when he needs to. And I feel like that's the part of being smooth. And, you know, maybe he's going to take that next step of, you know, being able to dominate. I think going into a place like Mexico, though, like from your perspective, Scott, what like what notes do you have already? What other tracks are you looking at that have maybe similar types of corners or stuff that you're going to take notes from? And also, like, have you seen like pictures of how NASCAR may put their own touches in setting up the track? Because sometimes I feel like the track walk is the first time people see things and they're like, oh, NASCAR, we got to move this or we got to change that or, you know, I don't like this or this barrier's here or these rumble strips are wrong or whatever it is. So what have you guys seen so far? What do you anticipate maybe it being like when you get there?
Yeah, track walk's going to be super important. I think we get to do that like Friday morning, first thing when we get there. We'll go out and walk around it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's going to be, you know, tire packs placed in some corners, you know, figuring out where those are, you know, just like say, but yeah, there's a lot to learn from that, walk around that track. And, you know, the tracks, it's not exactly what F1 runs and it's not what Xfinity ran the last time they were there, you know, however many years ago that was. It's a little bit different. And we are using I think where they used to run all the way around the oval section, we actually cut through the what they call like the stadium section. So it's going to be an interesting, it's got a lot of different technical challenges. It's got some really long straightaways. So it's kind of like there's three road course sections separated by some really long straightaways. So it's going to be unique, some things to go look at there and figure all that out once we get down there. We studied, I mean, I mentioned kind of like the stadium section, you know, similar tracks that we looked at. The one that comes up the most when you try to research and look at corners and things like that is actually Circuit of the Americas. A lot of similarities there because it's got that little stadium section, some really similar corners in that area. And then even going back, there's some similarities to the old Indy road course that we ran, you know, a few years ago.
Yep.
So we got a couple tracks to compare to, and all tracks that we've been good at. So hopefully we can, like say, those parts carry over, and we can do the same here.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott Graves, our guest here. He's the crew chief of the number 17 Ford Mustang for Chris Buescher. They are getting ready for Mexico City this weekend, as well as the number 6 for Brad Keselowski and the number 60 for Mr. Ryan Preece. When you look at this racetrack, you look at Mexico City, and you look at the fact that Chris has been successful on road courses like we talked about. Is there anything else you can compare that to in sport? You know, I in baseball, they talk about a 5-tool player, and I'm trying to think about, you know, maybe basketball, a guy that's like 7 foot and can dunk but can shoot 3-pointers. Give us an idea from a crew chief's perspective of why the skills are different. You know, there's going to be a novice person that's going to think that a race car is a race car, and whether it's an oval or road or whatever the hell that it is, short track, super speedway, a good race car driver is going to be able to have success. That's not the case. I mean, these are all different skills. From your perspective, is there anything that it can relate to, in your opinion, that just kind of pops out as far as another sport, as far as what it takes? Like, Chris has that ability, that skill to be good at all the different tracks.
Yeah, it's definitely like you're all-rounders. You know, the guys that any sport, I think, has, I mean, you see sports that have like specialists, and then there's the people that are just kind of the all-rounders. And I guess that's what you would say Chris is comparable to in any other sport. And it's weird. Like, you don't see, a lot of times you don't see like people cross over very well from if they're really good on a road course. They don't always cross over to the ovals and in the different styles of racing. So there are differences for sure. I mean, it's just I don't know, that being able to pick up on a road course multiple corners together and get the flow right, and just the understanding of how all that works versus just, you know, doing the oval track stuff. There's a lot of differences, and obviously Chris has a pretty good grasp on that. You know, it's I'm trying to think, you know, now we've got, you know, even more complications coming in some of the road course with the tires. There's more like tire management and some fall off that they're trying to work with, and I think even that falls into Chris's style and benefit as well when we get into I don't know if we'll see as much of that here at Mexico or not, but we certainly saw some of that at COTA earlier this year. So I don't know. He's able to react to those situations, manage it pretty well. Like I say, it just kind of goes back to being smooth and staying out of trouble, and that seems to work out pretty well.
Now, Scott, I know for me personally, my Spanish is not very good. 4 years of high school Spanish and decently poor grades that didn't really suit me well. But for you, how is your Spanish going into Mexico? Is it better than mine?
Probably not.
Are you on Duolingo or Rosetta Stone or Babbel or just trying, or you're like, I'm going to wing it?
I'm going to wing it. Same thing, high school, took Spanish in high school. My parents lived in Puerto Rico for a few years when I was in college, and like I went down there in the summers. And
new facts.
There was a point in time where like I knew maybe a little bit. I would never say I could speak it in any way, but I could kind of like understand. And but it's been a long time, so I'm not going to be in a good spot on that.
It's just a weekend.
It's just you'll be fine.
You're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Scott, good luck this weekend. We are cheering for you. Fingers crossed for all three cars: the 17, the 6, and the 60. That is the fabulous crew chief for the number 17 team. That is Scott Graves. Let's take a break here on Backstretch Banner, and we'll come back with the competition director of RFK, Josh Shell, who's got to figure out this new track for all three squads. So we'll talk about it next with Josh right here on Backstretch Banner. Welcome back. It is Backstretch Banner with Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing on Sirius XM NASCAR Channel 90. I'm Chris Childers. Elijah Burke from RFK is alongside, and it was great having Scott Graves, the crew chief for the number 17, on the show. But now we talk to a man who is no stranger to this program, who's got 3 numbers he's got to worry about this weekend, not just one. As they go to Mexico City, they go to the road course. It is a track that race fans are familiar with if you watch F1. If you don't, then this is going to be a brand new world for you. But Josh Shell is with us. He's the competition director at RFK. Josh, it's good to have you back. We've talked a lot in the past, never about a new track in a new country, but here we go. Is it a regular week for you, or is this a little different going to Mexico City?
I mean, it's definitely different just from the logistics. You know, none of our cars are in the shop this week. They're already crossing the border into Mexico right now. So definitely that's different. The travel's different, but once we get to the track, you know, that part really won't be any different than any other week. So everything leading up and coming home will definitely feel a little bit different, but the actual at track competition part should really be about the same.
You know, guys, I didn't think about that. You're going to have all these NASCAR teams. Like, I'm thinking about the movies when you have the border, right, and you have the big Mexico sign and the whole thing. And think about it. All these haulers are going to be going through and crossing the border, you know, with the number 17 and the 60. It is going to be a scene unlike anything else when it comes to crossing the border from the United States down into Mexico, which is going to be pretty crazy, Elijah.
Yeah, they actually just crossed this morning, and one of our hauler drivers in the number 60, he sent me a picture when they're all staged in Laredo, Texas, and they're sitting there, and they're all in a line, and all the comments like, oh, man, it looks like that scene from Smokey and the Bandit, I think when they had the standoff or something. And it's 60% of the comments. So that was cool to see. You said they made it through customs, everything, and they were on the road down, so they're in a good spot there. The logistics of the race just, you know, kind of it interests me a lot. So I'm curious here from your perspective, Josh, like what have been some of the hurdles? And there's 2 I can think of, and one is like I saw a little bit of the manifest for like everything you guys have to put together and list that is in the haulers alone, which is hundreds of parts and pieces and how much each one is worth, all this stuff. You talk about that process, and then I also think like making sure all your employees have passports, making sure everyone is like, we all got to come to the shop and get on a bus and go down to the airport. Like, can you walk through what that process is and what the challenges have been for you in your role?
Yeah, so on the manifest part, I think we started working on that probably 2 or 3 months ago, and just having our truck drivers go through kind of cabinet by cabinet and inventorying everything that was there, and then we have to figure out, what are the costs of these different things, and then, even down to the engines, we don't really know what the cost of some of that stuff is. So we had to work with Roush Yates to establish some of that. So that absolutely was a challenge. And then, on the personnel side, same thing. We've probably been working on that longer, even than the transportation piece, making sure that, number one, all of our employees have their passports and got their applications in a timely manner to make sure that they had their passports in the time frame we needed. And then, because we are all technically working in Mexico, there's a bunch of additional paperwork that goes along with that. You kind of mentioned the.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
We're working in Mexico, so
Okay.
yeah, there's some.
I never would have thought that.
Yep.
That you had to do something. Okay.
Yep, there's some forms and paperwork and things that we've been told you need to have with you at all times. If a government official stops you, you need to be able to show them
like a work visa kind of thing.
similar to that.
Similar? Okay.
Yeah. That you need to be able to present that paperwork at any time. And then NASCAR's raced in Mexico before, but even for me, I've been doing this a long time now, and this is my first trip to Mexico, and I think there's probably more folks in our traveling group that have not been to Mexico and done an international race than have been. So, that's just the unknown for everybody is a challenge as well. So, certainly all of our folks here at RFK have done a great job and worked through all the process paperwork. NASCAR's been communicating with all the teams and really have kind of taken the lead on all of this. So. I think we've got everything in a good spot, but it's been a big lift to get everything to this point.
You talk a little bit about, too, once you guys are there, getting to and from the track, I noticed it's what is that going to be like for you, and how does that different from a normal race weekend, let's just say in Michigan last weekend?
Yeah, so normally it's, each group of 4 or 5 people have a rental car, and that car decide, we all know when the garage opens, and we all kind of decide, hey, I want to leave this time before the garage opens. This week's completely different, right? There's charter buses that will leave from every hotel. They leave at a prescribed time, and if you're not there, then the bus is going to leave without you, and then they drop you off, and you have I'm not sure what the distance is, but a reasonable walk to get into the track, into the garage area. So everything just completely different this week.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. And I'm sure it's cool, it's an experience, it's going to be a memory, but one that you're probably really excited to get through and just get back just get back to normal, right?
I was talking to one of the officials this week, and they said I've never been so excited to get to Pocono as I have been this year, right? So
100%. I think everybody's kind of feeling that way. I hope whatever the intention was works. Whatever the thought was behind Mexico City, I hope it works, because it seems like a massive pain in the ass if it doesn't. And I've said this a couple times on the show, love Mexico City. But I was just down there, and I didn't see any NASCAR stuff. I saw F1.
Right.
I saw Checo Perez everywhere, but I didn't see any NASCAR. So I hope it works, because certainly it's a great country and great race fans, but a lot of out of the comfort zone for all of you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last week was pretty damn good, though, so at least you got some momentum. All 3 teams in the top 10. What went right? We talked to Scott that tire testing seemed to help. How would you describe last week for all 3 teams?
Yeah, I agree. I said to somebody after the race, one of the worst things that can happen in my position is we go through the time, energy, expense of going to test somewhere, and then you come back to race and don't really have the results that you want. So certainly to have a strong day across the company at a place that we were able to test a little while back, that's great for everybody. I think I saw a stat that it's the first time RFK's had 3 cars in the top 10 since 2016 or something like that. So certainly great for all the teams, all the guys. Everybody's working hard, and feel like all 3 cars realistically probably need to get a win. I feel like we're getting into the kind of the variable part of the schedule with some road races and Atlanta, Daytona coming up, where you might see some kind of unexpected winners. So Obviously the 17 was really close. Just needed a couple things to go a little bit differently, and they're bringing another trophy home from Michigan. But honestly, I think all of our cars had the capability, given the right situation, to be in contention. So really encouraged by that, especially coming off a little bit tougher week than we were expecting at Nashville. But yeah, I feel good about where we're at and where we're going, and excited to get to the next handful of races here.
Well, I know we talked about it earlier in the show with Scott, but just the momentum going from, the momentum shift really going from Nashville to Michigan and now going to a pretty big race in the schedule. I know that Brad, was really in position to run even better, and he had a speeding penalty, going to the final stage there. And I feel like, he had tweeted something earlier saying, well, on our side, our telemetry showed 59.4, NASCAR system showed 60.9 miles an hour, and I believe the pit road speed is just below 60. It's like 59.99.
Yep.
So is that something that happens often where there could be a difference, or have you guys figured out what that might be, or what is an explanation for, I guess, fans or people who see that and they're like, I don't understand how there can be that big of a disparity. What's that like?
Normally all that's really close. I don't know that I think we're to a point where we completely understand that yet. We're still kind of going through the data that we have to understand what happened, and if it was on our side or if it was some sort of fluky equipment issue on NASCAR's side. Obviously, selfishly, I don't want that to happen to us, but I don't want it to happen to anybody else either, right? Like that's we want to beat people straight up, fair competition, and all of that. So if there's anything we can do to help identify any issues, make that better in the future, we'll certainly do that. But yeah, certainly it was a tough blow for them, not at the right point of the race. Kind of had to go to the back once again and try to work their way back forward. So. I know Michigan's always a big race for Brad, one he would really like to win. We've had cars capable of doing that in my time here, but we just haven't been able to put it all together yet for that group.
Well, hopefully it's coming soon. How would you talk about managing all three this year as the competition director, and Josh Shell is our guest? The 60, I think, has been a surprise. The 17 had an interesting year. It's certainly been successful, but there's been crap to deal with off the track with NASCAR. And then you've got the 6, and the 6 happens to be a guy whose name's on the team, and their luck just hasn't been there. So for you, what's that been like to manage?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest thing for me has been, and I kind of alluded to this talking about the 6's day at Michigan. I don't feel like our potential and our results have always matched up with each other. So, it's trying to find that balance of, the results at the end of the day are what we're judged on, but trying not to overreact and make a bad decision because we're not getting the results when we don't necessarily feel like the results are a good indication of where the cars have been. I feel like, particularly with the 6, there's been some sort of issue, self-induced or not, just about every week that they've had to overcome. And then, I think we've probably wrecked more cars this year collectively already than we would in a normal entire season. So, it's just been challenging, but I'm encouraged every week. I feel like we have a car that's in contention to have a really good day, and obviously Michigan, we had all the cars that way. So I said to a few people this week that we need to make Michigan kind of the normal expectation, and when we do that, we'll be in the place that we need to be, where we're in contention for a win week in, week out, in contention for deep runs in the playoffs, championships, all those sorts of things. So I think the potential's there. We've just got to have it all go our way.
I think on the topic of expectations, I think of someone like Ryan Preece right now. He's sitting, I think, is it 2 points above the cutoff line or something like that in the playoffs. And, you can look back at, and this could be every car in the field probably, you look back at moments where you're like, man, we could be 50 to the good, So I look at his top 10s this year, and finishing 9th on Sunday, that's his 6th top 10 of the year, and there's plenty of points here, like he was just about to get another one. That's the most he's had in a season now. He had 5 last year, I think was his high at Stewart Haas Racing. We're not even halfway through the year yet. What do you see in him? Is he exceeding your expectations? Is he meeting them? Is there points where you're like, man, I think we're this close to him really just clicking off, running in the top 5 or even getting that first win?
Yeah, I mean, I think all those things are true. I didn't know what to expect, but I don't know that I think we could ask for any more than what we've gotten from Ryan this year. Not even the on-track stuff to the side. Off track, he's been a great teammate. He's done everything we've asked him to do as far as preparation, conditioning, all those things. So, yeah, he's. I don't know exactly what my expectations were, but I think it's safe to say that he has exceeded. He and the whole team really have exceeded anything we would have expected or hoped for. Especially, that whole thing didn't come together quite as early as we would have liked, and not that we were scrambling, but it was late in the year when we're trying to put things together, right? So that whole group's done a great job, and Ryan's been an excellent teammate and has helped add to our program, and honestly has done everything you could ask for.
He's added to RFK. He's added to Backstretch Banner as well. He has been a real delight to have, and his energy, his attitude. He's just a good dude. I tell everybody, they say, I've had some people that have found NASCAR through Netflix, which I think is a good thing. And they've asked me, like, don't you work with a team? Don't you do a radio thing? And I'm like, yeah, I do it every week. And they're like, give me some drivers. So I tell them about Chris, and I tell them about Brad. But I'm like, but this Ryan Preece, I think you'd really like this guy, especially if you're from the north, because I'm from the Chicagoland area, and I think he's kind of a guy that could cut through to a whole different group of people. Being a young guy from Connecticut, so he's the man, and I think it's awesome to see how he's fit so well. Let's break. Come back. It's a big weekend. It's an interesting weekend. There's nuance we have not talked about yet. Let's get into it. Josh Shell is our guest. Chris Childers, Elijah Burke. It's Backstretch Banner with RFK. We're back here. It is Backstretch Banner with RFK Racing, Sirius XM NASCAR Channel 90. Chris Childers with the fabulous Elijah Burke. From RFK, we've got the competition director for Roush Fenway Keselowski, Josh Shell, is with us for a few more minutes on the program. Altitude is a little different this weekend for any athlete that has ever played in Mexico City, and the United States soccer team has said this over the years. They say that it's like running around with a plastic bag over your head. Now, hopefully that is not the case while you're driving a car. But as far as the race cars and how it affects them, give us an idea of what you guys can do differently and what is in your hands. I know the louvers, and there's some decisions that you have. What is different this weekend from that perspective, Josh?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. Number one, just the air density and the altitude make the engines make substantially less horsepower than they normally would. So that's one piece of it. But then because of the altitude, there's less ability for the air to cool the brakes, cool the engines, just cool the car in general. So we've got a couple of different, or each OEM has one different option for their louvers on the ducts coming out of the hood. And we'll run our practices and look at all of our engine temps, and then each OEM will be able to decide for themselves what their cars need to do for the rest of the weekend, and that'll be set going into qualifying and kind of locked in. So that's another thing that, there's been a bunch of time and energy spent on that. NASCAR did some wind tunnel testing last week to kind of verify where everybody was at and make sure that we were in a good place there. I think the Fords are probably reasonably well positioned from what we can gather to be in a good place cooling wise. So, we'll just take that as it comes, and it's just another factor that we'll have to adjust for.
When you say substantially less horsepower, are you talking 4 or 5, talking 20, 25, or you just don't know?
No, it's more in the 20, 25, maybe more than that range.
Wow.
I think the air, not to get too technical and nerdy, but the air density
we like that.
is probably 25% lower in Mexico City than it is other places. So, yeah, it's substantially less horsepower. So, yeah, that should be noticeable.
That is, I did not know that, but that's why we have you on that for the inside look.
I'm telling you, that altitude in Mexico City, it messes with things.
Yeah.
So, very interested to see how for example, when it's actual, stick and ball sports, I guess foot and ball sports and soccer, it's a huge advantage for the Mexican national team because they're used to it. And then you have other countries come in there and it's like, they're breathing, they're huffing, they're puffing. In this case, you have a bunch of cars. You're trying to figure out how to get them, to work at the best, in the best way they can. But you're certainly working against that altitude. It's a whole nother world. So another level of science that goes into it. Like we said earlier, everybody's like, let's just get through this race. If we win, that would be amazing. But who the heck knows what this is going to look like? What else have we not talked about that people have not thought about from a logistics standpoint that has been a little extra from a team preparation perspective this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as crazy as it sounds, we had to clear all of our food, drinks, all of that stuff out of the haulers. We're not able to bring anything across the border either way, so that's going to be different. There's the kind of normal conversations about tap water in Mexico City and being aware of that so you don't end up sick or those types of things. And then, just people being smart, being responsible, being aware of your surroundings while we're there and doing the right things and all that sort of stuff. There's going to be, a reasonable amount of free time for the folks there. So hopeful everybody can, take in some of the things to see and do in Mexico City, but be smart and be responsible, while they're doing it.
I know once we get through Mexico and Chris Buescher wins and Brad and Ryan finish second and third here, we're going to go to a Gateway Tire Test, it sounds like, which is a playoff race now.
Yes.
What are you guys looking for there? Who's doing the test? What's that going to be like for you?
So Brad in the 6 car will be doing the test, and it's a little bit the same thing we talked about with Michigan. Try to obviously work on our car to make it faster, better for Gateway itself, but then also just trying to take advantage of some time with data on the car and getting to look at some different tires and try some different things we may not be able to do during a normal race weekend. So really just try to maximize the on-track time that we get there, try to help Goodyear get their work done and continue to, improve the tires, improve the short track product. I know that's probably what everyone would agree is the thing that needs the most work right now, and try to bring back some valuable information for all of our teams.
Sure.
We got like a minute left, but how many tracks can you logistically test in a year to get, like from a money, time, all that?
Yeah, I mean, we're really limited by what NASCAR allows us to do. We probably do, I don't know, I'd say in the range of 5 tests a year. And, we're kind of scaled for that right now. If we were to go to, testing 10 times or testing every other week or whatever that might be, we would have to scale our people, resources, budgets, all of those things kind of accordingly. So we're in a place where we can do about 5 tests a year, and that's kind of where we've been the last few years, but certainly that can change at any time.
Last question I got. Does NASCAR select which team inside the organization gets the test, or they say, or like for Goodyear Tire Test, RFK is going to do this one versus Penske, and you get to pick if it's Brad, Chris, or Ryan?
No, so basically they leave it to each OEM, and then the way Ford does it, and I assume the others are the same, as we do effectively a fantasy football draft, right? The highest organization in points gets to pick first, and then it goes to the next organization and the next, and then we kind of circle back around to the top. The one thing that has changed this year is NASCAR has put a rule in effect that each organization can only test at one playoff track. So like Gateway and New Hampshire are both playoff tracks, both tire tests this year, but those had to be split up between different Ford organizations. So Penske, for instance, couldn't test at both of those.
The more you know, folks. I had no idea.
That was actually a really interesting
very
way
interesting.
to end the show.
Yeah.
Because I did not know that either. Elijah, that's why we have you on. Thank you, pal. And Josh, good luck this week, man. Let's
Thank you,
go
sir.
1, 2, and 3. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Josh Sell, the competition director at RFK. I'm Chris Childers. Thanks to everybody for helping to put the show on. Our production team in DC for SiriusXM. We've got Thomas Burfield, everybody fantastic. We thank them. And we'll see you next week on Backstretch Banner.